back when the internet wasn't a thing and floppy disks were young. Bill Gates was merely a geek with a gleam in his eye. A four-eyed boy wonder who transformed a software writing hobby into Microsoft. A behemoth that gobbled up the world's desktops like a giant Pac-Man. He was the software visionary who became a billionaire, who persuaded the world that Windows was a necessity for our daily lives. But a couple of decades later, the billionaire nerd decided that he would rather code human life instead of software. So what transformed Bill Gates, a software geek, into the self-appointed Jesus of global health? To ponder why Gates swapped pixels for the hypodermic needle, one must first plumb the murky depths of the billionaire psyche. Imagine you're Gates, richer than a king, the owner of one of the world's biggest companies. What's left to conquer? Human life, perhaps. Life, disease, mortality, the very heartbeat of humanity. That's the grail for a man who's already won at everything else. Gates saw that with vaccines, he had a chance to play God without actually living above the clouds. It's the megalomaniac's wet dream. Not merely to dominate the machine, but to master the flesh and blood creature who uses it. And what better way than to cast oneself as humanity's syringe-wielding saviour, one prick at a time. The vanity is almost poetic. Back in the 1990s, Gates wasn't exactly the government's most popular person. Microsoft was a great white shark the US Justice Department longed to harpoon. Gates was dragged into court for capers that made Tony Soprano's business practices look like a church raffle. The feds loathed him, mistrusted him, and saw him as a monopolist. Fast forward a few decades, and the same man who once ducked subpoenas is now whispering in the ears of prime ministers about pandemics and population control. How did this reversal of circumstances occur? Easy. He traded the courtroom for a throne of his own making. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, bursting with more money than a small nation's GDP, became a planetary piggy bank for politicians and professors. And suddenly, governments weren't suing him. They were sucking his toes. Take the World Health Organization, where Gates's donations rival that of entire countries, or the UK, who gave him an honorary knighthood, India, Australia, even Uncle Sam. They all take the knee as he sermonizes on his vision for humanity. And all because he throws cash in their leader's direction. It's a spectacular reinvention. From a hated billionaire geek to a blessed visionary oracle. All because he discovered that money sings the sweetest song when it is swathed in do-goodery and placed in the pockets of politicians. So, what credentials qualify Gates to lecture on the future of humanity and health? He's not a physician, neither is he a virology expert. His true diploma is his wealth, north of 100 billion, and his foundation, a juggernaut that lets him bankroll studies, bend institutions, and has the elite kissing his feet. A god complex and money, not competence, are his credentials. However, there is an Epstein-shaped blot on Gates' saintly CV, a smudge that won't disappear, no matter how many press releases he churns out. Billy the Geek rubbed shoulders with Jeffrey Epstein multiple times. Why? Gates insists it was philanthropy, and meeting up with the convicted child sex offender was for charitable reasons. But Melinda, his ex-wife, wasn't swallowing it, branding Epstein evil personified and citing those meetups as divorce fuel. The optics are a horror show. A billionaire altruist saviour of mankind partying with a child predator whose guest list read like a who's who of the damned. It's a question mark that looms like a guillotine. Gates's story is a patchwork of half-truths and head-scratchers. He's dismissed any Epstein link, yet their rendezvous stack up like spam in your inbox. He's mocked anyone tying him to COVID-19, crazy and evil, he sniffed, while funneling cash into vaccines that stoke those very fires. He has floated the theory of population reduction via healthcare, then backpedaled when people questioned his desire for genocide. His 2015 TED Talk warning of a pandemic looks prophetic, too prophetic for some, who see him as the playwright of the pandemic and not a clairvoyant. He is a paradox, a philanthropist who profits, and a healer who haunts. One wonders if he believes his own script or if he's just too far in to rewrite the lines. When one unelected tycoon can nudge global health policy, muzzle skeptics by stuffing money down their throats, and party around with convicted molesters, then trust erodes faster than a sandcastle at high tide. His grand designs, mass jabs, mosquito farms, population reduction, madcap geoengineering like blotting out the sun, sounds like a dystopian reboot of planet Earth, where humanity are lab rats in his laboratory. And now, Billy the Geek wants to play farmer. But instead of buying a tractor and some cowboy boots, he has began sermonizing from his billionaire barnyard about the sins of steak and the virtues of crickets. He's become a prophet of protein swaps, telling us to ditch cows for cockroaches, or at least lab-grown meat and insect burgers, because he says cattle are climate criminals, farting with such intensity that it makes the sun hotter. Through his investments in outfits like Beyond Meat and his land grabs, with him now being America's largest private farmland owner, Gates fancies himself as a farmer who won't allow you to eat meat, but will permit you to eat maggots. Then there's Appeal Sciences, a Gates-backed venture now adding chemicals to our fruits, taking natural products and making them unnatural. Is it innovation or intrusion? One pictures him cackling over a cauldron, seasoning your apple with a liquid layer of something unpronounceable, all while preaching that meat's day is done. The man who once force-fed us Windows updates now wants to force-feed us locusts. Progress, he calls it. But it feels like Gates playing both God and Mother Nature. Not content with rewiring our diets, Gates has donned the mantle of climate czar, wielding his fortune like a green-tinted sword. He's the preacher of the climate fear gospel of global warming, where his solutions veer into the realm of science fiction megalomania. Gates has funded the concept of dimming the sun with chalk dust pumped into the atmosphere. Solar geoengineering, he calls it, as if Earth were a giant desktop computer he can tweak with an update patch. His book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, reads like a technocrat's manifesto, brimming with carbon taxes, a return to the dark ages, and a zeal for net zero that smells of sanctimony. He flies across the world in his private jets, while lecturing about reducing carbon emissions, a hypocrisy so ripe it could fertilize his fields. When a billionaire plays God with the weather, with our immune systems, with our agriculture, with our freedoms, one wonders, is this salvation or a new slavery cloaked in an eco-friendly blanket? Bill Gates is a conundrum clad in a cardigan, a man who spun code into gold, gold into sway, and sway into a secular crusade. Is he the saviour of mankind? Or is he a billionaire having a midlife crisis? One thing's for certain, he's not content to merely reboot your laptop. He's after rebooting your immune system, rebooting your diet, and possibly rebooting your soul. As the World Health Organization and our leaders bend to his billions, we might pause to ask, who elected this man to play God?